Hey, all, this is Sean Gerber with the Reduce Cyber Risk podcast, and we're going to be talking today about the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, otherwise known as CMMC. And we're going to go over an overview around the actual certification. And there is a version that came out in 2020 called, it was 1.0. And as of 4 November of 2021, there was an update of the 2.0. And so we're going to kind of go over both of those. Originally, I'll just go over the 1.0 and give you the updates or where it's at. And then at the end of the podcast, I'll give you the updates to what has come out with the recent CMMC 2.0. Okay, so as the podcast goes, you'll be hearing this conversation, but you can also go to my YouTube channel and be able to see the actual slides themselves and how the breakout is of the overall PowerPoint. But bottom line is we'll go over this outline of what's there, followed by we'll kind of get into all the aspects of it. So from an overview standpoint, the CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, it came out in 2020, and it is part of the Department of Defense's Industrial Base Certification. It's designed for contracts, products, services, and their supply chain. So as you all know, there's been a lot of hacks that have occurred in the U.S. government and basically around the world that have been affecting various products and services, but has been really targeting the supply chain of aspects. And to kind of give you a little bit of understanding of what the supply chain is the moment that a chip is created to when it is put into a computer, to when it is put into a system, which is then put into, in the case of the Department of Defense, an F-35, that's a supply chain from beginning to end. And so there has been various attacks on that aspect. And if you interrupt any one of those pieces of the supply chain, it can have dramatic impacts on the overall program itself. So in regards to the government, they want to look at ways to protect that from potential hackers, from either nation state hackers or from just people being difficult and going after and targeting the Department of Defense. It's designed to protect what they call controlled unclassified information. So if you get my CISSP course, you'll know that we talk about data classification, and unclassified data is a data classification model. So from my previous background, being a hacker, we would attack various systems looking for unclassified information, or typical, and if you're running a business, it's business sensitive data. And we would gather all of that information. And by gathering that information, you would put together almost a classified idea of what the program actually is. So they're focused on targeting controlled unclassified information within each of these organizations. Now, the organizations wouldn't necessarily be a Department of Defense organization. It would be a contractor or subcontractor, and understanding where is the data that they house in behalf of the U.S. Department of Defense. This certification is required for any DoD contracts. Now, this is based on version 1. There have been some recent changes to this, but we'll address those at the end. There's some key terms. There's a C3PAO, which kind of is a spin-off of Star Wars. There's an ASSESSORS, Registered Provider Organization, Registered Practitioners, licensed partner publishers, and then licensed training providers. So this came out of the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement, otherwise known as DFARS, and it launched in 2016, and it was designed to protect DoD from cyber attacks with some level of regulatory requirements. Now, these requirements were based on a self-assessment model. They've come to find out, like many cases, when you're dealing with cybersecurity, and if you're working on your CISSP, you know that there are self-assessments and then there's audits. An assessment can be done from an internal aspect, and that can have some teeth, as long as the organization that is doing that information or that assessment is feeding that information direct to the CEO or someone that has some sort of decision rights within your organization. But what was coming down to is that it was becoming a pencil whip. We call it a pencil whip. A pencil whip exercise, in that people would just go say, "Yep, I got it. Yep. I've got all these things in place," but they really didn't have those things in place, those different cybersecurity controls in place. And so in reality, it was just a checkbox exercise. And so that's why the Cybersecurity Maturity Model came into being in 2020, and it was to supplant the DFARS regulation. So again, the point of it is a self-assessment versus a certification, and they're very different, and they have very different ramifications. But what you'll find out with the CMMC version 2 was when they first rolled this out, they obviously didn't talk to people that were within the community, because looking at it just from the beginning, from a first blush approach at the CMMC version 1, it was extremely draconian with its controls, and there was no way that a contractor or a subcontractor is going to be able to do all of that, especially in the time frame they're looking for. Now, I will say that there are places you'll see with version 2 that that certification is still there, and so for individuals who do have a strong tie to the Department of Defense, you're going to have to maintain some level of certification. Now, you're going to have to comply if you're a contractor or a subcontractor, and I assume this is kind of targeting folks that are listening to this podcast or this YouTube channel are focused on their CISSP, but you might be providing services to a contractor or a subcontractor that deals with the Department of Defense. Now, and also my folks that are listening to this that may be around the globe, just keep this in mind. This is for the U.S. government. However, your country, wherever you might be, it's highly likely you're going to have a very similar approach. I deal with the with the Chinese government as well as with Canada and Europe, and these kind of regulations are affecting them as well. A little different spin on it, but they still affect those countries as well. I know that the CMMC model is kind of as well very similar to the UK's model. So this information is good no matter where you live on the globe. Now, what is a C3PAO? A C3PAO is a third-party assessor organization, and they will contract with, again, it's the government, so then, and any federal branch or any government will use a lot of acronyms, but they will contract with the organization seeking certification on what they call a marketplace. So there's a marketplace where you go out, if you're a company, you'll go to this marketplace and you'll say, I am an organization seeking certification. I need someone to come out and certify me. You'll go to that marketplace and you'll find someone who will do that for you. And if you're a person or a company that's looking for that, you are an organization seeking certification. You will schedule an assessment on the CMMC AB portal. So you go into this portal, this marketplace, and you'll say, yes, I need a certification. You will hire and train, or you will go to this portal and you will select somebody. The third-party assessor organization, the C3PAO, that is designed to hire and train certified assessors that are supported by certified professionals. So we'll get into the names, but you have an assessor, you have professionals. Those are key pieces of individuals who will go out and actually do the work. And then they deliver assessments with certified assessors and provide advisory services. So just think of the third-party assessor organization as a company that will provide assessors and professionals to help you get your company up to speed. Now, what's the benefit of being a C3PAO? You're authorized to enter into a contract to deliver assessments, and you'll be listed on their directory, and you are an accredited organization. The key piece of this is people will come to you because they have to, and you will be able to get business routinely. So being a C3PAO is a benefit, and if you're dealing with Department of Defense contracts, you can expect that those contracts might be relatively lucrative. So again, there's a good benefit if you want to be a C3PAO. Now, if you want to be that, there's they call out what is required to be an organization that finds the assessors. They have to have insurance coverage that is general liability. They have to have an errors and omissions policy, and they have to have a cybersecurity breach policy. If you've listened to my CISSP podcast, you'll know that breach policies are changing, but they're basically calling out that if you want to be that organization, you're going to have to do some various aspects of it. As it relates to the U.S. Department of Defense, you have to be citizen business owned. There do have some provisions in there for green cards and various aspects that are, if you're not U.S. business owned, but the key piece is they want U.S. citizens to own these organizations. And that does make sense, especially if you're dealing with the Department of Defense. But that doesn't mean that won't change in the future as well. Now, again, they talk about you must complete a CMMC Level 3 assessment. So again, you'll hear me talk about these levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The new version 2.0 is going to change that a little bit. So it's basically going to roll that back, but just keep that in mind of the levels that you have to have. So if you're talking 1 through 5, if you're a C3PAO, you must be in the middle. Just keep that in mind. Data storage and defined, you must store, process, and transmit. Anybody that they have any CUI, they must have a way to store that data. You also must, if you're storing that data, it must meet FedRAMP high baseline. So there's a FedRAMP requirements for storing U.S. government data, and you would have to meet that if you are going to be a C3PAO. They have various clearances that are available to you, and you will probably have to meet those as well. One thing I thought was interesting is, coming from my background in the military, they will actually sponsor clearances. The CMMC AB will sponsor those. I'm not sure how that'll play out, but if you're going to have to do an assessment of the DoD, you're probably going to have to deal with a clearance, especially in some of these more tightly held areas. And so there's going to be some aspects around that. There's some various fees. As you can see here on this slide, basically applications $1,000, activations $2,000, and your annual maintenance is about $2,000. It's a lot of money if you're just thinking about it and you're not gonna do it. But if you have an organization that's going to be offering up assessors, it could very easily pay for all that. That's not a big deal. Okay, so now we're going to deal with assessors. So we talked about the C3PAO, and that is what is an organization that maintains the assessors. Now we're going to talk about the assessors specifically. So they're broken into 2 different categories. There's a certified CMMC professional, and there's a certified CMMC assessor. So CCP, okay, if you're the Communist Party, or a CCA, certified assessors. Now the process is, again, the C3PAO will be trained by the CMMC licensed training providers, and we'll see that in a little bit. And they will be certified by the CMMC AB. So you got your C3PAO, you got your CMMC AB, and then those inside that C3PAO will be individuals who are professionals and assessors. And those assessors will range from level 1 to level 5. Okay. Now that may change again with version 2 and in subsequent versions, but right now it's saying you have to have a version. You have a certified professional, and then you have a certified assessor 1 through 5. They will be hired by the C3PAO. And then they will go out, and an assessor will deliver certified consultation, and they'll deliver assessments based on the criteria called out by the CMMC. Now, if you're going to be a professional, that if you are authorized to participate in assessments as a team member, you're eligible to become an assessor. So the CMMC professional, CCP, is the first step in becoming an assessor. It's credentials as an employee with requirement training, and if you're an employee that works for a company, you may want to consider to be a CCP. It will also be one that can help train up individuals as well within your organization. All the professionals will be listed in the marketplace, and then they will be the stepping stone again to a level 1 assessor. What will happen is you're going to have to go from level 1 to level 5, and they have a stepping stone graduated process by which you can do that. After basically 3 assessments as an assessor, level 1, you will get their air quotes logo. But then what can happen is that will take you up through the next benefit, up to the level 2s. I should say level 3. Now, as you become a CMMC assessor level 3, you are, after 3 more assessments, you can use the CCA 3 logo. So you go with CCP, you have 3 assessments, you can use their logo. You become a level 3 assessor, you then can use, after 3 assessments, you can use their logo. And again, that kind of stair-step approach goes up. But you have to have so many assessments to be able to get into training. Once you become the level 3 and you go to level 5, then you have to, before you go to level 5, you have to have 15 assessments under your belt. So they just have a graduated process by which you would get more assessments, makes you more educated, more trained to do those assessments. Citizen requirements, again, you have to be a U.S. citizen. Now, if there are going to be international C3PAOs, especially with the Department of Defense, because they do some contractors with people outside the United States, that will have to be worked out. And that hasn't been considered yet, how that's going to play out. But expect us to see more of this in the future. They have to have full implementation, I believe, by 2025. So there'll be more to follow in coming years. Okay, so your CCP, this does it sets you up to be a professional certification exam, and it's your step towards becoming a CCA. And that's what you want to do. If you want to get into the assessor organization and do that for a career or for part-time or whatever that might be, you have to get the certified professional exam, certifications exam done. On the slide, you'll see there's various learning objectives that they have called out. But some big key ones here is identify risks within the federal supply chain, describe how CMMC model ensures compliance with federal acquisition regulations, regulated information, established certification and assessment scope of boundaries. Again, there's many various aspects of it, but the bottom line is you have to be able to assess what the risks are, understand the controls, and then recommend implementation of things to fix those situations, those issues. This is focused on, and if you've dealt with the U.S. government before, there is various ways they have used standards to get to a level, or I should say, they've had documentation to help you get to a standards level or a framework. And within the CMMC, they use NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST documentation, and there's two main ones that they use. 853, which is the cybersecurity framework, is what they use, and that's typically what that's learned at, and the CSF, cybersecurity framework. And then there's the NIST 800-171A, which is protecting CUI data. So again, that's classified, that's unclassified information that's there's data stored in non-federal systems. So 853 is a cybersecurity framework. 800-171 is what helps define the CUI data and how it's going to be stored. Those are the main frameworks that they use for the CMMC assessments. And because of that, you have to know how that is set up and how that would work within an organization. Okay, so the prerequisites for being a CCP, you have to have a favorable background check. Here's an interesting part for some of I teach college classes at Wichita State here in Wichita, Kansas, and they have a lot of guys that are coming out of college, and one of the things that they require from a CCP is if you have a college degree in cyber or information technology field with 2+ years of experience or 3 years experience in an equivalent aspect. That's part of being the CCP. So if you they want to have some level of experience. You can't just come right out of college. However, a lot of the guys that go to attend my classes do have some sort of job experience that they get while they're in that going to school. So you got to have that to be in the CCP. They have some related training, and this is the folks that have listened to my podcast that deal with the CISSP. It's not required to be a CMMC professional, and one of the pieces that I read around this is that if you have your CISSP, that does not grandfather you into becoming a CCP. It can help you, and I can see the benefit of it, but they will not use a broad brush approach of saying, well, hey, if you're a CISSP, you're automatically a professional. That fast tracks you to becoming that. It does not. You have to have a level of experience besides the CISSP to be able to do it. I think they may change this a little bit in the future, personally, because it's so hard to find cybersecurity talent today. We'll see how this plays out. But some of the related training they recommend that will help you become a professional is a CISSP, Security Plus, Network Security Introduction Training, and then there's also the Information Privacy Professional. Those are different aspects to it. Now, to become certified as a CCP, it's about $3,500 US dollars, which is pretty steep. So I would expect that the benefit of becoming a certified professional would outweigh that cost of that certification. All right, so CMMC Assessor Level 1. Again, fiscal year 2026, all organizations providing products to the U.S. Department of Defense must have a maturity level 1 certification. Now, with the update, they did say that level 1s can be self-assessments. So if you are a level 1, then you can just self-assessment based on the new versioning that came out. But by 2026, everybody has to have at least a maturity level 1 cert. So that's a key piece of all of this. So an assessors will go and they will assess organizations. They will look into some key pieces around identity access controls. They will look at identification authentication controls and then media protection controls. Those are some of the key aspects around a CCA1 and what will you look for. Also physical protection, communication protection, and then information integrity controls. So there's about 6 different objectives that you'll have to meet as a level 1, and the CCA1 will evaluate those. There's different frameworks that they utilize, and you can see as you go to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see where that's located at. But there's various aspects that you would have to manage as a CCA level 1. They've also had some jobs that they've said that could potentially be someone who would want to be a CCA1, cyber legal advisor, and then privacy officer, privacy compliance manager. I'll say I deal with the government with the CFAS regulations and also with the MTSA, which is the Maritime Transportation Security Act. I would say your security person probably would want to get certified in this space, especially if they're having to ask or provide some level of guidance to the U.S. government and to their senior leaders. So something to keep in mind, if you do have an organization that has a pretty good size Department of Defense contract, I'd recommend at a minimum getting somebody set up as a CCP within your organization, and you may potentially want them to get the CCA certification depending upon how much of a regulatory requirement is deemed upon you. Okay, registered provider organizations. These are organizations that have they provide registered providers of technology or of the training on staff. And these are basically implementers and consultants. So you have your assessors and your professionals, which help with the assessment aspect. Then you have individuals who can help consult and provide some implementation capability. And that is a registered provider organization. That typically might be your E&Ys and your other organizations that provide consulting. The benefits of being an RPO is, again, you have the ability to be tied into the CMMC ecosystem, and you have folks that it's a non-certified aspect. So if you're a consultant or an implementer, you're not certified to come in and say, yes, you can you're a level 1 or you're a level 3 or a level 5. They can't tell you that, but they can definitely help you become better set up. So when the assessor does come into your organization, you're not caught flat-footed. So if you do have say you don't have a real strong cybersecurity experience within your organization, you may want to look at a consultant to help you get into a position where you're ready for an assessor. So that I would consider that. And as more of these organizations get stood up, you'll see that. The one challenge I see happening is if you're a small company that has a requirement, it could get very expensive working with an E&Y or Deloitte & Touche. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. I see an opportunity for cybersecurity professionals maybe to start up their own organizations and your own business to provide these capabilities for people. So that's, I think, is an aspect that you may see more of in the future. Bottom line on this is if you do sign up as an RPO, you do have to pass background checks. You got to have a Dun & Bradstreet number. So you have to be a legitimate business that's up and operational. And you'll go through and you'll apply online. I think they've closed that down for right now, but I believe there's going to be opening that back up here in the near future for new providers to be able to do this. So I can see an individual want to do consulting. You could become a provider organization, and then you would be yourself. You could be a consultant to help organizations get better ready for an assessment. As far as registration goes, you'd apply online, pass your background checks, and the registrations are good for 1 year. So there is some cost to that, and you have to renew each year. Registration is $1,000, $1,000. Application fee is $4,000, and then your maintenance fee is $5,000 ongoing. So you can see pretty quickly this will add up, especially if you're paying for any assessors or consultants within your organization or assessors. this could get expensive. But if you're dealing with a multi-million-dollar contract with the Department of Defense, you can pass that charge off onto the Department of Defense, basically, because that's just part of the doing business. Because everybody that does this now at the DoD is going to be forced to have this certification. Registered practitioners, RPs. Okay, so these are all part of a registered provider organization. A practitioner, they're the ones that do provide the consulting and they can implement. But again, the big factor they wanted to make a point about was this is not certified. So as you see, there'll be training I can see getting stood up, similar to what I do with my CISSP. There'll be training around becoming, how to be better prepared for an assessment from the one of the assessors, and helping. I know I'm not making a lot of sense, but bottom line is I can see this standing up where online training is going to become available for if a company wants to know what is an assessor going to be looking for, how do I deal with that. There's going to be opportunities, but you cannot use that training as a certified thought process. And they're also going to recommend that if you do get any sort of training around this, you get them from registered practitioners. Now, that's not going to stop somebody from just putting something out online, but if you really want the best training and the best ability to be able to be qualified for an assessor, then you may want to hire one of these practitioners to help you out. Key tenets for a registered practitioner: you got to be trained based on the CMMC methodology. You got to be tied to their code of conduct. And the key piece around this is that you just got to be certified to do it. There's some online registration aspects you can do, and you can sign their code of conduct. You want to, if you're an individual looking to become a person who will provide these services, you'll need to get a hold of a provider organization such as E&Y or somebody else that will then bring you on as a contractor to provide these services on behalf of them. The registration is good for a year. And then again, you work with the registered provider organization, RPO. There's various fees that are involved in that, and those still haven't been totally flushed out yet at this point. One thing I thought was interesting is that you can pass those fees. So the application fee, you can transfer that on to another named person within the same organization. So if you say you're a company and you want to be prepared for an assessor, and you say, you know what, I'm going to hire a RPO. And this RPO has a list of people that can do this for you. They can, if people come and go from an organization, so they hire somebody and that person leaves, they can transfer that certification, the application, I should say, can be transferred to another organization within that company. The big thing around this is again, organizations must be certified to bid on contracts. I had heard that at the time when it was still level 1, if you want to be able to bid on any contract, you're going to have to be a level 3. I think that's probably going to change now to maybe with the new change to a level 2. But the thought process is that they want you to be at a certain level before you can even apply for a contract. So if you're a small company listening to this and you're probably overwhelmed with everything going on, the key thing to keep in mind is that you're going to have to hire somebody to help you do this, especially if you don't have a security person on staff to specifically walk you through how to make this happen. Again, organizations seeking certification. So again, this is for individuals who are looking to be certified. You as an organization seeking certification will go to the marketplace. You're going to look for a C3PAO who will then schedule an assessment as with a certified assessor. What I'm hearing is that finding somebody like that is taking forever. So you still have time. Obviously, 2026, fiscal year 2026 is the key, but bottom line is that you're going to have to go online and you'll have to set up a time with an assessor. You're then going to probably want to find somebody, an RPO, so that's again, provider organization, to help you understand what do you need to do. So they'll provide some consulting to you to make sure you're up to speed. Now, what happens is you go and you set this up with this assessor. They come in and they do an assessment on you. When they do that assessment on you and they find resolutions or they find issues with your organization, you have 90 days to resolve the findings of that. So the moment they come down and say, yes, you have these problems, you need to fix them, you have 90 days to resolve those findings. So that's going to be a key factor as you move forward. Just understand that that's kind of waiting in the wings. And again, you're going to have that certification will be good for 3 years. So the clock will tick. So I assume that what's going to happen is there slowly people up to fiscal year 2026, which I believe is 2025. The moment you get to 2025, there's going to be a mass influx of people trying to get certified. They're probably going to give an extension because they know they're not going to be ready for it. But realistically, so 2025, let's just say, is when you get your certification done. You have until 2028 to get recertified. Now, the bottom line is that they're saying is 6 to 9 months to get certified. So you're basically about every 2 years, you're going to want to be going into this process to make sure that you're ready so you can be able to bid on contracts. The RPO, they'll pre-assess your network policies and procedures. They'll provide gap remediation to help you meet your organization's needs. And that they'll base it on the 3 PAO certification requirements. So this is something you won't be able, if you're an organization seeking certification, if you're a company, a contractor or a sub, and you're going, what the dickens is going on? You're going to have a process in place to deal with this. You can use online resources to help you, but in reality, you're going to need some level of consultation to at least give you guidance on which way to go. All right, so there's currently a CMMC level 1 and 3 assessment guides that are out there that you can use. And I know the appendices of this YouTube video and of these slides, you'll be able to see them. But realistically, those are, they kind of give you just a broad brush of what you're going to have to do. Again, if you're a company looking to see how to do this, you're going to need somebody to help you. And whether it's an internal cybersecurity resource that you have that can help you walk through it, or hiring an outside consultant to get you better prepared for this. If you have a good DFARS program in place, it shouldn't be a huge stretch to go get certified as a CMMC level 2 or 3. I think if you have a solid DFARS program in place, you shouldn't be of a huge stretch. But if you don't, and you just were out there going, yep, didn't know what I assigned to, but I took care of it, you're going to need someone to help you with this. No question about it. Level 1 assessment, this is the breakdown. There's about 6 different criteria that they focus on. And again, it's not super in depth, but it does, you have to meet this aspect. And a lot of it comes down to, do you have controls in place? Do you have physical controls in place? Do you have policies and procedures in place? And do you have a way to identify and authenticate individuals? Your level 2 assessment criteria, as you'll see here, is on the slides, but bottom line is there's about 8 different criteria. Again, many of the same ones you had in level 1, but there's added aspects to it around physical protection, media protection, and then maintenance, and configuration management. Those are kind of a key factor. I shouldn't say 8. There was not. I apologize. I did. My next slide. There's about 15 total, and you'll see that from a security assessment, situational awareness, and then recovery and risk management. Okay, so the level 1 through 3, this you see on the slides, but bottom line is it kind of walks through what they're using to get level 3, and that's your NIST Special Publication 800-171. That is where you will have, you'll be able to see how this is all broken out. But again, the level 1 is for basic safeguarding requirements around protecting the DoD information. Based on what we have at level with the CMMC version 1, level 2 was a transition level. What they've done is they've ripped out level 2 and they've consolidated. So instead of level 1 through level 5, they've got level 1, 2, and 3, which is a much better approach. The level 1s through 5 was just too complicated. So level 2 in the first one was designed as a transition level, but consider that now being removed and changed. So there's no transition levels anymore. Level 3 addresses protection of control unclassified information and all the practices for the CMC model, level 1 through 3. And again, that level 3 is now level 5, level 2 is now level 3. Yeah, it's confusing as all get out. I apologize. I'll have some other podcasts that'll be out there that kind of talk through this as more comes out. But just think of it this way. There's levels 1 through 2 and 3. That's it. There's no level 1 through 5 anymore. 1, 2, and 3. This here just kind of talks about certifications. The assessment certification guide. Contractors can achieve CMMC certification for the entire enterprise or a specific segment. So it's something to keep in mind as it relates to your CMC certification. You don't have to be certified in the entire enterprise. It can be a specific segment within your company. So it doesn't have to be everything. But you do need to define the scope prior to the assessment. That's a key factor. And that assessment that scope that you define, that you specify, you get very tight on, that is the same scope that you'll want to make sure that the CMMC assessor knows, because you don't want to say, yeah, just focus on this one area, and then they come in and the assessor assesses everything. Again, assessment criteria is based on the 800-171A objectives. The one thing they wanted to call around out of this is that of the objectives and methods, they do need to be document-based artifacts. You can't just say, yeah, I've got it. You're going to have to show them what you have. And that's going to be, even from a process standpoint, you're going to have to show them. So they have objectives and then they have methods. The methods, the objectives are the mechanisms, activities, and individuals. That's the objectives. The methods are the examination, the interviews, and the testing. They're basically saying, show me your documents. Okay. They'll talk to somebody and say, prove to me that this is what you do. And at the end of it, they may potentially test you and go, okay, I want you to create an account, and then I want you to delete an account. So there's a process by which they're going to do this if you're going to become certified. They don't just want to take your word for it. One other piece around this, when it comes to the assessors, when the assessors come to your organization, or if you are an assessor, they're not expected to employ all assessment methods and objectives, which basically means they do have discretion to decide what they're going to assess and what they're not. So they do have a flexibility in regards to that. They could come in and do everything. They could come in and just do a sampling. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I feel a lot of it is going to be, like any sort of audit, they'll start digging, and if they find lots of issues, they'll dig deeper. If they find very little issues and it looks like your program's tight, they could be there and gone very quickly. Again, the bottom line is it's not going to be exhaustive and or prescriptive. They want to understand from an assessment standpoint that you have the policies and procedures in place, you have training materials, you have planning documents, you have all these aspects to have a good cybersecurity program, and you're protecting the controlled unclassified information. They're going to break it down into the 3 areas: met, and not applicable. So if it's not met, you're going to have 90 days to address those issues. If you're a person looking to be an assessor, that would be the 3 criteria by which you would evaluate individuals. The slides kind of talk about a little bit about practice and process descriptions. We won't get into it here as far as from a standpoint of each individual area, but they break it down very similar to, if you've dealt with their CISSP, various other frameworks from ISO 27001 to COBIT to any of these other frameworks you've dealt with from a cybersecurity standpoint. They're broken out very similar. So as an example, you have access control. They'll have AC.1.001, which basically means section 1 of access controls and then control 1 of that section 1. And then they'll have AC.1.002. That would be control 2 of section 1 of access controls. So they break it down into that space, but they're just going to go through and you're going to map it of going, do you have access control 1 in place? Do you have access control 2 in place, and so forth? And but it's very similar to what you've dealt with as it relates to other types of frameworks. Now, if you're listening to this for the first time going, what the dickens is that? Then I'd recommend you listen to my podcast. I kind of keep coming back to that because we talk about frameworks as well. It's an important piece that you're going to have to know from a security standpoint, especially if you're providing those level of services for your company or organization. And again, they talk about examine, interview, and test. Those will be big factors, making sure you have all of that. Now, a licensed partner publisher, this is an individual or an organization that can provide educational courses for individuals. And there's only LTPs, there was only 20 that came out. So if you're seeing video online, so like this training video is not from a licensed partner publisher. So therefore, it is not something they would say as it helps the CMMC from a certification point of view. This kind of information is informational only, and you can take it for what it's worth. It's my points and what I put out there, but it is not certified and licensed by them by any stretch. If a person wants to provide online training for students, they would have to become a partner publisher. and then they would deliver the content to the students based on that. So keep that in mind. If you're getting this training and you go to Udemy, and I have CISSP courses on Udemy and other CyberX and other places out there, you can get the training, and there's nothing going to stop the CMMC from people like myself or anybody else putting out that training. However, again, you got to keep in mind that it will only take you so far, and it is not a certified training method. And you could be getting taught items that are not based on what the CMMC wants you to learn. So you need to maintain, as a partner publisher, you need to maintain your CMMC AB. You need to develop the training curriculum based on the CMMC AB's approved curriculum. And then you can provide that online or in person, depending upon how you want to go about it. And it's based specifically on learning objectives. Now, they will deliver the certification exams for the CCP and the assessors, as well as the instructors that are out there. So that's going to be their responsibility to do that. They delivered the training to students based on the approved curriculum, and it is facilitated by a certified instructor. Okay, so again, I'm not a certified instructor, and you couldn't use my training that I provide to get you anything other than some educational knowledge basis. So if you dealt with a licensed partner publisher, then you could. So again, keep that in the back of your mind. Talks about the benefits of being it. Again, you get to be on the marketplace, the CMMC marketplace, and you're approved to deliver that content. You must deliver at least one course, and they must be mapped to all the exam objectives. So again, like my CISSP course, I have objectives based on your CISSP, your domain 1 through 8. They must be mapped to each of those objectives, and they must have the information they need to be able to help them pass the exam. If you're going to be a publisher, you have to have over 200 hours of published courseware curriculum in place, minimum of 2 years of publishing history, and then you must have at least 3 similar client references as well. Now, what they consider that would be a training provider would be colleges, universities, online schools, professional schools. Other learning providers would as well. So various schools could become a provider. I see this as an area where they're going to see more and more of this pop up, just because we become used to lots of training online. My college courses that I teach, part of them are online, part of them are in person, but that's become the norm now with COVID. Some of the benefits, again, obviously you get to work directly with the marketplace. You get to work with, you get a full set of students, and it's a great opportunity for you to, if you're going to do this, to provide really good content for students and to help people become certified with the DoD. Cost of that's about $1,000. 1 year certification fee, or year one is $4,000, and then your annual maintenance fee is $5,000. So you're going to basically have $5,000 right out the gate with your one-time cost and your certification, and then ongoing you'll have $5,000 per year to keep your maintenance fee up. DUNS number, professional conduct, many of the same things you've seen before as it relates to the other aspects of the CMMC. You must provide 1 certified class per year if you're going to be a training provider. People must have 2 years experience in training and educational services. And you must have 3 clients that can help you as a provider. So you have the publisher, and then you have a provider. So let's say like myself, I want to become a provider of training. I need to have at least 1 certified class per year. I must use the CMMC AB approved training materials, and they must be taught or facilitated by a certified instructor. Again, those are the qualifiers: 2 years experience. You must be able to provide education online or in person, and at least 3 suitable client references. Okay, so the 800-171 outline, it just kind of talks through the security weaknesses, deficiencies, very similar to any other framework out there, but it's focused specifically on controlled unclassified information and how to protect it. The monitoring activities, situational awareness, all those pieces. If you're a business, this is the first time you're hearing this is a lot and it's overwhelming. And to be realistic, you're going to need somebody to help you out with this, because it's going to be too much for you to try to do on your own, especially if you're trying to run a company. The 800-171, its target audience is program managers, system developers, people doing security assessments, people providing privacy and risk management, governance, oversight, those folks, a cybersecurity professional or privacy professional within your organization is the individual that would need to understand 800-171. So it talks about the various controls that are in 171, access controls, awareness and training, configuration management. There's various security requirements around each of those. My plan is at some point with the Reduce Cyber Risk podcast and my CISSP is to provide these in my podcast, as well as some YouTube training around it, just so you understand what are they, what would be an example of a security requirement around incident response, and then how would you manage that. So again, these are just various on the outline. It goes up to 3.14 is the overall. So 3.1 to 3.14 and the various security requirements with that. If you're looking at the slide, you'll be able to see, go to YouTube and you'll be able to see the actual overview or cut of that. But it talks about access controls, audit and accountability, and once the NIST 800-171 will have this all broken out. You click on links and it'll take you to each of those controls and the families. From an access control requirement, it talks through, like, for example, I'll just give you, as you guys are listening to this, the 3.1.1 is security requirement. It states limits security access to authorized users, process acting on behalf of authorized users and devices. And then it breaks it into subcategories. 3.1.1, 3.1.1a, 1.1b, c, and so forth. 1.1a is authorized users are identified. So can you identify if you have users within your company? Are each of them identified? Okay, cool. If you can, then you would meet 1.1a. Process acting on behalf of authorized users are identified. So is there a process in place by which someone is given an account? Is that process defined? Well, yes. Okay, great. You meet it. Devices and or other systems authorized to connect to the system are identified. Do you have a list of all the computers that can connect to the network? Yes. How do you maintain that? How do you deprovision it? All of those pieces will help you maintain and understand if you meet that potential objective. And then from there, it breaks it into different areas as well. And then from the assessor will look at it and go, okay, so there's a basic, focused, and comprehensive. The basic would be, it's a high level view. If you're dealing with a focused, it's high level, but it then digs into more in-depth studies and analysis. And if it's comprehensive, it's very detailed and thorough studies. So again, it breaks it into basic, focused, and comprehensive. Now, again, as far as the update goes, CMMC 2.0 for November 21 basically said this: they're eliminating levels 2 and 4, and they're renaming them to the 3 levels of 1, 2, and 3. And so level 1 would be foundational, level 2 would be advanced, and level 3 would be expert. So level 1 was similar to level 1 before. Level 2, the advanced, was similar to level 3, and level 3, which is expert, is now was similar to level 5. So they just compressed everything. Okay. They also said they're removing the CMMC unique practices and all maturity processes from all levels. Not really sure what that means, and we'll see how this plays out. I've looked online to see what other people thought about that. It isn't real clear. So we'll see what that entails, but just keep in mind there's now just 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3. Level 1 will allow for annual assessments with an annual I can't say it, by DOB company leadership. So if you are a level 1, then you can have a self-assessment, and the defense industrial base company, okay, whoever that is, their leadership has to self-assess, say, yes, we did a self-assessment and it's good. Okay, so they're making sure the CEO or whoever signs it. Level 2 is advanced, and that's acquisitions involving CUI will require an independent third-party assessment. So level 2, you're going to have a third-party assessment. Prioritized acquisitions involving CUI. Non-prioritized acquisitions will require an annual self-assessment and annual company affirmation. So I'm not sure what the prioritized acquisition versus non-prioritized is, but if you fall in that prioritized bucket, you're going to have an independent third-party assessment. If you're non-prioritized, then probably self-assessments will be sufficient. I don't know if subcontractors would fall into the non-prioritized. I think that's kind of where I see it kind of heading towards, is that they will then just have self-assessments and annual company affirmations. Level 3, which is the expert, government-led assessments, time-bound enforceable plans with milestones, and then selective time-bound waiver process if needed and approved. Bottom line, if you're the top tier DoD industrial base kind of company, you're going to be level 3. You're going to have the full Monty, everything. If you're probably down there where you are in most of the companies I see, are probably level 2, and that's where they can get away with either being a third-party assessment, or in many cases, maybe the self-assessment like DFARS will work. However, keep in mind that it won't be like DFARS where you can pencil whip it. I feel that there's going to be a lot more scrutiny put into this than it was in the past, just because there's now assessors involved. And they probably have the ability to say, you know what, if I'm going to give you that contract, I want you to be assessed. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Okay, so here's the references. You'll see those on the YouTube channel. But bottom line is, there's a lot here. And I went through a lot in a very short period of time, which is probably extremely overwhelming. But just know that the CMMC is a big factor if you deal with the Department of Defense and the industrial base here in the United States. Also, key takeaway, if you're listening to this and you're from someplace else other than the United States, you're going to be dealing with something very similar, because I've seen it where countries will take from one country to another country, and they just modify country. So China will take from the United States, modify it to fit their needs. UK will take from China to modify it and take from their needs. You see this in the privacy regulations and in the cybersecurity regulations. So it doesn't matter where you're from, it's important for you to understand at least the overall large concept, because you're going to have to deal with it at some point in time. Okay, I hope this has been beneficial. I know it's a lot of information. Just know that my Reduce Cyber Risk podcast, check it out. We're going to be redoing it again. I came back. I took a little bit of a break while I was teaching college classes, but we're back. You're going to be seeing more content come out of that. It's from my CISSP trainings, and as well as any new and upcoming things that are occurring. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Check out the YouTube as well, my YouTube channel, and also go ahead and check out Reduce Cyber Risk podcast. Have a great day. We'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.